Audiobook, The Spirit of Narcissism in Today's World. By Milco Baute. Written and published in 2023. Dedicated especially to the scorned men, who are victims of feminism in our corrupt society. Introduction. In today's global society, 80% of divorces are initiated by women. This trend is attributed to a spirit of narcissism influenced by modern feminism. As women become independent and empowered through stable employment or successful businesses, owning homes and cars, they often view their husbands' perceived flaws as burdens or obstacles they can no longer tolerate. This is not necessarily due to materialized infidelity but rather a result of the modern empowered woman finding certain aspects of marital life boring, leading her to break homes, separate families, and dismantle the lives of husbands who invested time, energy, resources, and efforts into building a home. While there is nothing inherently wrong with women being independent and empowered, qualities that can be virtues, modern society tends to favor women, especially as mothers. On the other hand, men, seen as strong and paternal figures, appear destined to relinquish everything they've labored to build and provide for the sake of a family. The woman is often perceived as the victim or the more needy party. When a man sacrifices everything he has given and worked for out of love, leaving a trail of his sacrifices, showing compassion, and even giving up half of his possessions, society often considers it foolish. A home is not built by buying a house, a home is not a home without a family. The person who breaks up their home due to a lack of forgiveness, economic problems, boredom with their spouse or partner, differences in decision-making, customs, habits, and misunderstandings is unwittingly giving space to the devil. The devil's mission is precisely to destroy the family, the foundation of society. This common and invisible enemy that we all face only comes to kill, steal, and destroy. How many men and women have taken their own lives because they no longer have the desire to live, age alone, or see no purpose in life after a divorce? Many others are left disoriented, broken, demoralized, and emotionally, psychologically, or economically destroyed. Particularly, it is the man who strives the most to care for his family. And I'm not referring to the scoundrel or womanizer, nor the addict, drunkard, or abuser. I speak of the diligent and hard-working man who supports his family. It is written, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places." Ephesians 6:12. The Word of God is clear, telling us that we are in a spiritual war, not against individuals used as instruments of evil by the enemy of souls but against the devil himself and a well-organized army of spiritual hosts, demons, principalities, and powers that constantly attack us. Let us keep our faith firm, dressed in the full spiritual armor, trusting in God and His promises, binding the enemy, unleashing promises and blessings, declaring victory at all times and persevering until the end, despite any momentary tribulation, which God allows to strengthen and test us because he who endures to the end shall be saved. Matthew 10:22. There are various types of narcissists, and believe me, it is not men who identify with this the most. I will explain why. Later on, you will hear the types of narcissists that exist. Usually, the narcissist is seen as a psychological abuser who uses emotional blackmail to devalue and humiliate people they can control or who serve them. However, the spirit of narcissism prevalent in the world today reveals itself in those who appear very affectionate and loving while they need you, but once they use you, they despise you, humiliate you, and start hating you senselessly, without reason, or for any excuse. They humiliate you while they can because they take pleasure in doing so. They cannot control their anger, frustration, and inability to resolve things because they suffer from chronic emotional disorders. By this, I do not refer to bipolar individuals or those with personality disorders, as narcissists are raised in a narcissistic environment, regardless of their social class. Over time, life and the mistreatment suffered in their childhood, they become narcissistic individuals, lacking forgiveness, growing up with hatred, and reasoning with pettiness. The narcissist despises those who love them and prefers the company of strangers or newly acquainted individuals. Another way this demon manifests in our modern society is through mind manipulation, seeking to be admired, recognized, and desired by strangers or outsiders. For instance, most social media influencers are individuals without notable talent or intellect who garner thousands and millions of followers from strangers simply by showcasing their bodies. They are empty-headed individuals with appealing figures, and even if some know they are not truly beautiful or desirable, they still do it for money, followers, or pleasure because modesty has been lost in today's world. Taking nude or nearly nude photos and videos has become very natural, turning into a vice for the narcissist who enjoys being seen and valued for their nonsense, as well as for the audience or followers who fall victim to lust and vain pleasure. It is not necessary to have the paid OnlyFans app installed on your phone, which is more conducive to lust, as having Instagram, Facebook, and even YouTube is enough, pure cheap lust, pure narcissism, and fetishism. Having these social media platforms on your phone is a spiritual danger, even though it may seem harmless and necessary, as they captivate the eyes and mind. So much valuable time is wasted browsing through numerous vain things on social media, entertained by visual pleasures, animal videos, accidents, and countless foolishness that can lead us into the trap of vice. Personally, I use these social media platforms for promotion and business, although I also share messages with old friends who can only find me through that medium. Facebook, for example, has helped me reconnect with and learn about my old friends from childhood and youth, those who are far away and those who are closer. It keeps me informed about many things that television does not, and warns me of events I am unaware of, or events that may happen, although I try not to pay attention to alarmists and sensationalists, as the official press does. However, I try not to use Instagram and TikTok or even open them, although I also have accounts because I post written and video reflections, in addition to announcements. The reason is that these are networks that trap and captivate, robbing us of our time and attention. I am aware of the danger it poses, not only to the mind, soul, and overall health but also to the family, as I recognize that I was caught in the vice, not only of watching things that do not edify but also of seeing dancers and beautiful or voluptuous women showing themselves as bait. This demon trapped me, and I was scorned for looking at narcissists and repudiated by another narcissist. The word of God is clear when it states, "I say, therefore, to the unmarried and the widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I. But if they cannot contain it, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. And unto the married I command, yet not I, but the Lord, let not the wife depart from her husband, but and if she departs, let her remain unmarried, or be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put away his wife." 1 Corinthians 7, 8-11. "Whosoever putteth away his wife, and marrieth another, committeth adultery, and whosoever marrieth her that is put away from her husband committeth adultery." Luke 16, 18. This is how serious marriage is to God. Divorce is not of God, and what is not of God belongs to the devil. We cannot cover the sun with one finger or make excuses. If a husband abandons his wife, he is under condemnation, as is the woman, and if he marries another, he commits adultery. Many excuses and theories arise to cover up this fault or sin, but God is a God of order and judgment. He who is unjust, let him be unjust still; he who is filthy, let him be filthy still; he who is righteous, let him be righteous still; he who is holy, let him be holy still. Revelation 22:12. Not all are chosen, even though many are called. Let us thank God because we are part of the small flock. On this journey to eternity, we cannot take anyone with us because we will be snatched away one by one. Those of us who seek God, with our shortcomings and faults, let us keep praying for one another and for those who are lost and those who think they are doing well by doing things wrong. The salvation of the soul is not for those who do more good things or refrain from doing bad things, but for those who persevere. He who endures to the end shall be saved, Matthew 10:22. In other words, we are not saved because we are good or do not sin, because no one is truly good or justified before God, and no one stops sinning, even in thought. The fact that some sin differently than others does not mean they do not sin or sin less, because, likewise, the wage of sin is death, referring primarily to spiritual death equals our separation from God. Salvation is not for those who do not sin but for those who persevere until the end, holding on to God and through Jesus, our Savior, and only mediator. The narcissist. A narcissist is an individual who exhibits traits of narcissism, a personality disorder characterized by a persistent pattern of grandiosity, excessive need for admiration, and a lack of empathy towards others. This disorder can significantly impact a person's daily life and interpersonal relationships. To understand in detail what a narcissist is, it is essential to explore the characteristics, behaviors, and dynamics associated with this personality disorder. Characteristics of narcissism. Exaggerated grandiosity and personal importance. A distinctive trait of narcissism is an inflated perception of one's importance and abilities. Narcissists tend to exaggerate their achievements and capabilities, constantly seeking validation and admiration from others. Constant need for admiration. The relentless pursuit of admiration and recognition is another central characteristic. Narcissists crave constant attention and feel uncomfortable or irritated when they are not the primary focus. Lack of empathy. One of the most problematic aspects of narcissism is the lack of empathy. Narcissists struggle to understand and respond to the needs and emotions of others. They may appear insensitive or indifferent to others' experiences and feelings. Envy and competition. Despite their apparent confidence, narcissists can experience intense envy toward others, especially those they perceive as more successful or talented. This can lead to competitive and derogatory behaviors. Fantasies of unlimited success. Narcissists often have fantasies of unlimited success, power, beauty, or love. These fantasies contribute to their grandiose sense of self-importance and can influence their behaviors and decisions. Exploitation of others. To satisfy their own needs, narcissists may exploit those around them. They can manipulate, deceive, or use people without feeling remorse for the consequences. Difficulty accepting criticism. Low tolerance for criticism is a common feature of narcissism. Narcissists often react with irritation, anger, or disdain to any comment they perceive as a threat to their positive self-image. Superficial relationships. Although narcissists can easily establish relationships, these tend to be superficial. They struggle to maintain deep and meaningful emotional bonds, as their focus is on satisfying their own needs. Emotional manipulation. Narcissists are adept manipulators. They may use emotional tactics such as victimization, guilt, or intimidation to control others and achieve their goals. Lack of accountability. Narcissists have difficulty taking responsibility for their mistakes or wrong actions. They may blame others, constantly justify themselves, or downplay their own shortcomings. Origins of narcissism. Narcissism may have roots in childhood, with some experts suggesting it can arise as a defense mechanism to compensate for early experiences of lack of attention, abuse, or neglect. Children who do not receive adequate affection and validation may develop narcissistic strategies to protect their fragile self-esteem. Impact on relationships. Narcissism can have significant consequences on interpersonal relationships. Individuals with this disorder may struggle to establish and maintain deep, meaningful connections. Their lack of empathy and constant need for validation can lead to superficial and often conflict-ridden relationships. In the workplace, narcissists may initially stand out due to their confidence and persuasive skills, but their lack of collaboration and empathy can create long-term tensions. Treatment and management. Treating narcissism can be challenging, as the affected person often does not recognize the need for help. Psychological therapy, such as cognitive behavioral therapy or personality-focused psychotherapy, can be beneficial. However, the success of treatment largely depends on the individual's willingness to engage and commit to the therapeutic process. Conclusion: narcissism is a complex personality disorder encompassing a range of behaviors and characteristics. Understanding its manifestations is essential for addressing relational dynamics and assisting those who may be affected by this disorder. While a narcissistic personality can pose significant challenges, awareness and proper treatment can contribute to improvements in the quality of life and interpersonal relationships. Types of narcissists. Narcissistic personality disorder is characterized by a general pattern of grandiosity, a constant need for admiration, and a lack of empathy. While the diagnosis focuses on a set of common traits, it's essential to note that individuals with narcissism can manifest these characteristics in various ways. Here are some types of narcissists that have been identified. It's crucial to remember that not all experts agree on classifying them this way, and individuals may display a combination of these traits. Grandiose narcissist. This classic stereotype seeks constant admiration, overvalues oneself, and tends to belittle others. They display evident arrogance and often expect special treatment. Vulnerable narcissist. In contrast to the grandiose type, the vulnerable narcissist presents a facade of modesty and humility. Beneath this exterior, they have fragile self-esteem and are highly sensitive to criticism, making them challenging to identify. Malignant narcissist. This type exhibits sadistic tendencies, enjoying inflicting emotional pain on others. They engage in manipulative, competitive, and destructive behaviors, lacking empathy and posing potential dangers in close relationships. Somatic and cerebral narcissist. Psychologists distinguish between these based on narcissistic focus areas. Somatic narcissists emphasize physical appearance and sexual seduction, while cerebral narcissists seek admiration through intellect and academic achievements. Compensatory narcissist. This type uses grandiose behavior and the pursuit of admiration to compensate for deep-seated feelings of inferiority and low self-esteem. They may be obsessive perfectionists, constantly seeking external validation to feel worthwhile. Successful and unsuccessful narcissist. The classification between successful and unsuccessful narcissists refers to their ability to achieve life goals. Successful ones attain their objectives and maintain a positive self-image, while unsuccessful ones struggle, facing difficulties and potential despair. Spiritual narcissist. This type centers grandiosity on spiritual or religious aspects, presenting apparent spiritual devotion. However, their underlying motivation is often the pursuit of admiration and validation rather than genuine spiritual commitment. Parentifying narcissist. Assumes caretaking roles manipulatively, using these dynamics to exert control and gain admiration. They may sacrifice others' needs for their own self-image. Partner narcissist. Focused on romantic relationships, this type continually seeks admiration and validation within the partnership. However, they may struggle to maintain healthy relationships due to a lack of empathy and a constant need for gratification. Cyber or social media narcissist. In the digital age, some narcissists seek admiration and validation through online platforms, crafting an image on social media and constantly seeking approval from others, sometimes presenting an idealized life that doesn't reflect reality. Empathetically selective narcissist. Despite the apparent contradiction, some individuals selectively show empathy. They may be understanding and empathetic in situations that directly benefit or provide admiration but lack genuine empathy in contexts that don't meet their narcissistic needs. Artistic or creative narcissist. Narcissism is expressed through creativity and art. This individual constantly seeks admiration for artistic skills, using talent as a means to gain validation and recognition, possibly struggling with constructive criticism. Perfectionist narcissist. This type consistently pursues perfection in all areas of life. The obsessive quest for perfection may be driven by deep-seated insecurity, and the person may struggle with anything perceived as imperfection, either in themselves or others. Martyr narcissist. While narcissism is often associated with grandiosity, some individuals adopt a martyr role, presenting themselves as constant victims seeking sympathy and attention. This behavior may mask an underlying quest for admiration and validation. Self-referential narcissist. This type tends to monopolize conversations, focusing them on themselves. They constantly seek attention from others and may completely disregard others' experiences or perspectives unless directly related to them. Conspiratorial or paranoid narcissist. Some individuals with narcissistic traits may develop paranoid tendencies, interpreting others' actions as conspiracies against them. They may struggle with trust and see others as potential threats. Defiant narcissist. This type consistently challenges social norms and expectations, seeking uniqueness and standing out. Their defiant behavior aims to garner admiration and attention, perceiving themselves as special and superior. Consumerist or materialistic narcissist. This narcissist constantly seeks validation through the accumulation of material possessions and social status. Possessing expensive items or achieving a particular financial status becomes key indicators of their personal worth. Physical or mental health narcissist. Some individuals channel narcissism into an obsessive pursuit of perfect physical or mental health. They may obsess over physical appearance, diet, exercise, or emotional well-being, using these aspects to gain validation. Political or ideological narcissist. In this case, narcissism manifests through unwavering adherence to an ideology or cause. The individual constantly seeks validation and admiration by promoting their beliefs, often dismissing or belittling those who disagree. Codependent narcissist. This type displays extreme dependency on others' approval and validation. While exhibiting typical narcissistic traits, their self-esteem is so fragile that they become highly sensitive to any form of criticism or disapproval, sometimes becoming submissive to avoid rejection. Socially adept narcissist. This narcissist excels at social interaction, adapting well to different environments. They can be charming and manipulative, using their social savvy to gain admiration and ascend the social hierarchy, motivated by a constant need for recognition. Envious narcissist. This type experiences intense envy towards others' achievements. Instead of celebrating others' successes, they feel threatened and constantly seek to outdo others to maintain their sense of superiority, expressing disdain for those they perceive as surpassing them. Emotionally vampiric narcissist. Constantly seek emotional attention from others and drain emotional energy from those around them. They manipulate others' emotions to meet their own needs, without concern for the negative impact on others' emotional health. Protective narcissist. This type may appear genuinely concerned about others, especially those they consider extensions of themselves, such as children or close friends. However, their interest is motivated by the need to preserve an image of themselves as altruistic and protective. Gossip or defamation narcissist. Some individuals with narcissistic traits engage in gossip or defamation behaviors to undermine others and elevate their own image. They use information to manipulate situations and relationships, often aiming to discredit those who might threaten their perceived superiority. Parental protector narcissist. Assumes an overprotective role toward their children or loved ones. While appearing deeply concerned about others' well-being, their behavior is driven by the need to maintain an image of themselves as exemplary and dedicated parents. Constant competitor narcissist. Views life as a constant competition where they must surpass others in all aspects. Whether in work, personal relationships, or personal achievements, their primary motivation is to stand out and be perceived as superior. Aggressive passive narcissist. Expresses dissatisfaction and hostility indirectly. They subtly sabotage those they perceive as threats and use passive-aggressive tactics to express discontent while maintaining a superficial facade of kindness. I deserve it, narcissist. Believes they constantly deserve to be the center of attention and receive special benefits without justification. They may employ manipulative and demanding tactics to get what they want, justifying it with an inflated sense of entitlement. Avoidant narcissist. While avoidance is commonly associated with other personality disorders, some individuals with narcissistic traits may adopt avoidant patterns. They avoid situations they perceive as threats to their image, steering clear of failure or criticism at all costs. Nostalgic narcissist. Constantly idealizes the past, especially their achievements and experiences. They may refer to earlier times in their lives as golden periods, continually highlighting past successes to maintain a grandiose image. Demanding narcissist. Those with traits of this type constantly demand attention and recognition from others. They may make implicit or explicit demands for admiration and validation, feeling uncomfortable or angry if they don't receive the attention they believe they deserve. Social strategist narcissist. Masters at manipulating social situations to maximize their image and gain personal advantages. They can be shrewd in choosing friendships and connections to stand out, using relationships as tools to achieve their narcissistic goals. Moralistic Avenger Narcissist. Some narcissists adopt a moralistic discourse, presenting themselves as guardians of morality. They use their ethical beliefs to justify their actions and disqualify those who don't meet their standards, all with the goal of maintaining moral superiority. Influence or imitative narcissist. Despite the perception of a strong personality, some individuals with narcissistic traits can be surprisingly influenced. They seek to imitate those they admire, adopting their opinions, lifestyles, or even personalities to be perceived as superior. Defensive narcissist. This type tends to react defensively to any perceived threat to their image or self-esteem. They may become aggressive or excessively justify their actions to protect their fragile self-image. Constant comparator narcissist. The need to constantly compare themselves to others is a prominent feature of this narcissist. They continually seek situations where they can excel and be superior, feeling threatened by those who might overshadow them. Never enough narcissist. This type of narcissist lives in perpetual dissatisfaction, even when achieving recognition and admiration. They always seek more, striving to continually surpass their past achievements, as they never consider their success or recognition sufficient. Me first narcissist. The top priority for this type of narcissist is always their self-interest. They can be selfish and lack empathy, focusing on their own needs and desires without considering the consequences for others. These types of narcissists are general representations and don't fully capture the complexity of human personality. Additionally, it's important to remember that narcissism can exist on a spectrum, from normal narcissistic traits to narcissistic personality disorder. Diagnosis and treatment should be conducted by mental health professionals. It's crucial to remember that these categories are not rigid compartments. An individual may exhibit traits from various types of narcissism. Moreover, the label narcissist should not be used indiscriminately outside a clinical context, as the diagnosis and treatment of personality disorders should be carried out by mental health professionals. These descriptions are general and aim to illustrate the diversity of narcissistic expressions. It's crucial to remember that narcissism, in itself, is not necessarily pathological. It becomes a concern when these traits significantly interfere with daily life and relationships, indicating narcissistic personality disorder. Proper assessment and treatment should be conducted by mental health professionals. Other characteristics of narcissists could be mentioned, however, they generally manifest themselves in the ways represented above. If you identify with any of these or find similarities in your behavior, be cautious, because unknowingly or unintentionally, you may be acting as a narcissist or influenced by that spirit. I am not condemning you with this statement, as we all have our flaws. I simply recommend approaching God with an attitude of humility, praying, and asking the Creator to shape our character and guide us, because there are ways that seem right to a man, but its end is the way of death. Proverbs 14 verse 12. In this case, the Bible speaks of spiritual death, although it also brings judgment in life. God does not listen to sinners, but if anyone is a worshipper of God and does His will, God listens to him. John 9 verse 31. Remember that, whoever repays evil for good, evil will not depart from his house. Proverbs 17 verse 13. We all need salvation, no matter how bad or mean a person may be, and no matter how noble and good their behavior. Do not be deceived, God is not mocked, for whatever one sows, that will he also reap. Galatians 6 verse 7, we must identify those spirits and rebuke them from our lives, ask the Lord for forgiveness, grace, and wisdom, pray not to be tempted, do the will of our Creator, forgive everyone who offends us, attacks us, accuses us, hates us without reason, or for whatever reason they believe, and pray for them. Whenever I pray, I forgive my wife and my debtors, and with compassion, I ask God for His mercy, because I am aware of the eternity and the end that awaits those who live without God or behave as if they don't have Him. Although His word says, for He says to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I have compassion. So then it depends not on human will or exertion, but on God, who has mercy. Romans 9 verses 15 to 16. Man is always on the losing end. Modern society forces women to become independent because, with the high cost of living, a single income is not enough to support a family. It's not that it's bad for a woman to be independent, but that leads to children spending more time with people who are not their parents, influenced by society and whatever teaching they get, who knows from whom or what, because it's not just about school education. On the other hand, schools teach the same subjects to all children, regardless of their IQ or intellectual capacity, to then train them to become useful and efficient employees of a company or a large corporation, if they manage to enter university. There they are trained to be competitive, thus inflating the ego of a sick society lacking love, humility, principles, and values, driven by the rush and anxiety to achieve goals and acquire goods that can only be paid for with debt. Being independent may appear to be a family benefit, but it's just the beginning of empowering the woman and convincing her that she can do everything and doesn't need a man. The feminism imposed by modern society encourages women to achieve everything they set out to do on their own, without help from anyone. This leads, in many cases, to the breaking of the marriage covenant, whether civil or religious, because men are increasingly devalued. In doing so, they violate God's order, breaking the home and dividing the family. Man is always on the losing end, especially in first-world countries, because after a breakup or separation, the woman usually stays in the house and the man is the one who leaves, whether they have children or not. When I say house, it could be an apartment or studio where they live together, not necessarily a privately owned house. There are very few cases where the woman is kicked out of the house, even if due to infidelity, unless the rental contract was signed solely by the man. In the United States at least, when a couple moves into a house or apartment, both usually sign the lease or mortgage. And it doesn't matter who paid the money, or who bought the furniture, the woman will always stay with everything, and if she has children. It's even more certain. That's why the man is always on the losing end, and he has no choice but to start over. In short, women are not even worried about separation or divorce because they will always have suitors and better options. Whether they are young or not, beautiful or not, all are beautiful by force, with makeup, have money or don't even have a place to fall dead. A woman will always have someone waiting, known or unknown, or will find another man willing to give anything to make her his, to have her, marry her, and take care of her, while the man is left broken, worn out, defeated, depressed, distressed, especially after 40, because he will no longer have the same strength, vitality, health, and energy to build another family. Moreover, it's likely that he'll meet another divorced woman with children, which adds more burden to his life, on top of what he already carries with his own children. I come from a very poor country suffering under a communist dictatorship for more than 6 decades. I arrived in the United States at age 28 and it took me 25 years to achieve my American dream, after searching and searching, failing and starting over to have a family, build a home, and achieve the goals every man dreams of, like buying a house and having his own business, along with his family made up of wife and children. As I said at the beginning, after 15 years of marriage, my wife asked me for a divorce. I, as an honest gentleman and grateful for the years of her life she gave me and the children she bore me, left the house and gave her everything, my house, the one I got, paid the deposit for, invested in repairs and a guest room with kitchen and bathroom that is rented on Airbnb, the business, the furniture, which she kept paying, and the most precious of all, my 2 teenage children, whom I see every 15 days, since starting from zero, sick and unemployed, is not the best way to move forward or survive. I do not say this to vent or out of anger, because I wasn't created, nor was I born to hate or hold grudges. I only bring it as an example, that what happened to me happens to most men, whatever the reason. And I repeat, a drunk, drug addict, thief, abuser, or narcissist does not even deserve to have a family, and this I explain to my 15-year-old daughter now, that for that reason alone, she must escape a toxic and harmful relationship, but she must know how to forgive because whoever does not forgive does not love and will not be forgiven by God, since we all sin and no one can say they are right before the Creator. We all offend in one way or another, and the fact that the way of sinning is different does not make the person sinless or less of a sinner. In Cuba, where I was born, when couples separate or divorce, they must resign themselves to continue living together, at least for a while, because buying or renting a house is almost impossible, even if one has the money. Families live together and crowd in the same dwelling. This does not happen in other countries, where people have more freedom and rights. They can save, rent separately, or buy a house or apartment if they improve their financial situation, without so many requirements or ideological or political commitments, as in Cuba and countries under extreme left-wing dictatorships. Meanwhile, in the U.S. and other developing countries or rule-of-law states, couples who separate divide assets in half, regardless of who bought or paid for everything or almost everything. This is logical, it's fair, but in many cases, wives, and even in cases of cohabitation, women who separate look for a way to get rid of the man, because the woman, for whatever reason, when she no longer wants or needs a man or her husband, or does not love him, or does not want to live with him out of pity or consideration, she wants the man who loved her, or still loves her, and served her for the years they lived together, completely out of her life. Then they use very common strategies like a euphoric fight, to call emergency services, 911, or the police, request a restraining order, and thus get rid of the man once and for all. These women, although not all, know how to make their husbands or partners so angry as to provoke a strong rage that makes them lose reason. Many women have been embarrassed because in such cases, the judge does not approve that restraining order, since it is a minor offense, which the man must carry for the rest of his life, and because there is not enough evidence of a violent confrontation for the judge to consider it a case of domestic violence, he rejects the request, leaving the woman ashamed. A woman who threatens her husband or partner with the police or calling 911 is a woman who cannot be trusted and is a danger to her partner's integrity and the overall well-being of the marriage. He who seeks, finds. When a person looks for a detail, defect, or excuse as an offense from their partner, they always find a way to start a fight, because it is easier to reproach, scold, and fight, than to sit down and talk and solve the differences and problems at home together, the attitudes, bad habits, or customs that one does not want to accept or that bother them. Because offense would not exist if there were no one to be offended. When a home is not built on the rock, which is Christ, that is, on the principles and values of the Bible and God's will, there is not enough love to forgive, to lift up the fallen, to restore the relationship and fight the spiritual battle that we all face, married, single, parents, children, etc. That's when covenants are easily broken, and homes are destroyed. In all this, the woman generally seeks moral support, not only from society but from friends who influence her decision to separate and divide the family. The devil is our common enemy, an invisible enemy, who attacks with darts of thoughts, with entertainment and distractions that distance us from God's will, with confrontations caused by misunderstandings, actions and reactions, differences and attitudes whose origins lie in upbringing, education, or family inheritance, as can even be narcissism. He also uses other people as instruments of bad advice to lead us to bad decisions, because marriage is the foundation of the family, and the family is the foundation of society. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. Ephesians 6 verse 12. We are at war, not against people who are used as instruments of evil by the enemy of souls, but against the devil himself, our common enemy, and a well-organized army of spiritual hosts, demons, principalities, and powers who attack us daily. Let us keep our faith firm, dressed with all the spiritual armor, trusting in God and His promises, binding the enemy, losing the promises and blessings, declaring victory at all times, and persevering to the end, no matter what brief momentary tribulation, which God allows to strengthen and test us, because he who endures to the end will be saved. Matthew 10 verse 22. As I always do, I confront the things I analyze, explain, teach, and share or write, with spiritual advice from God, using the instruction manual that our Heavenly Father and Creator left us, which is the Holy Bible. I do not have the power to convince anyone to believe what I believe and receive these opinions and pieces of advice that I share, nor do I consider myself righteous, good, perfect, or holy. I am just a forgiven sinner who perseveres in the faith of my Savior Jesus Christ, who forgives all my sins and guarantees me eternal life if I follow him, sanctify myself and persevere. And to conclude this reflection, he who is unjust, let him be unjust still, he who is filthy, let him be filthy still, he who is righteous, let him practice righteousness still, he who is holy, let him be holy still. Revelation 22 verse 12. Salvation is personal. If we have already warned, advised, taught, and educated others, starting with our own family, then we have nothing more to do. Not all are chosen, though many are called. Let us thank God, we who live by faith in Christ and not by the customs and reasoning of the world, for we are part of a small flock, as the Bible says. On this journey toward eternity, we cannot take anyone with us, as we will be taken one by one, individually. Sometimes marriage is a scam, and we truly come to know our spouse in divorce. Getting married is beautiful, having a wife feels good, and buying a house, car, and furniture gives us a sense of achievement like no other, until the day she runs out of love and decides she wants a divorce. Today, more than 70% of divorces are initiated by women. Women are practically paid to divorce. Not only do they end up with half the assets, or all the assets and the children, but they are also supported with child support and alimony, if the woman earns less than the man or has no job. The question is, how many women would get divorced if they knew they wouldn't receive anything? I bet many would find the differences they claimed in their divorce petitions reconcilable. And why do many men not want to get married? Because they don't want to lose their assets. Some marry with a prenuptial agreement, but would you tell your partner that you don't trust her because you think she's going to ruin the marriage, and that's why you want to sign a prenup? A marriage that starts with mistrust does not guarantee a beautiful life, a successful marriage, or family well-being. If the prenuptial agreement were mandatory, it would no longer be about mistrust, but a legal requirement to ensure that people opt for marriage instead of living together without a moral, ethical, and biblical commitment, since marriage was established by God. You get to know your wife more when divorced than during marriage. Generally, when a woman gets married, her social and economic status increases. When a man gets married, the only thing that increases is his expenses, so many men see no benefit in it. A man gets married for love, with the hope that one day they won't take away half of everything he owns, even what he had before getting married, and all the effort, time, and money he invested in supporting his family. While the woman is already conditioned, knowing that if she gets divorced, she'll leave with half of everything. If she has children, she won't end up on the street, and if they are minors, she may even end up with everything, as happened to me in this case. For men to want to get married today, there must be laws that protect us legally. Very rarely does a man, in a divorce, leave the wife with nothing, whereas many women, through divorce, not only leave the husband with nothing but try to destroy him out of simple resentment and under the protection of the law. Men are stripped of their assets, and their children, and if the woman feels like it, she can even send them to jail with a false accusation. So, equality does not exist, as society with its wave of feminism claims for women. That way, they become even more empowered, and the spirit of narcissism takes hold of them, destroying the energy and masculinity of the man, who is always portrayed as the one to blame for the failure of the marriage, a broken home, or one destroyed morally and spiritually. A couple of days ago, this December 2023, I watched a Hollywood movie starring Ryan Reynolds titled Chaos Theory. No, it's not a science fiction movie, nor about physics or mathematics, but a tragicomedy that ends with a happy ending, something that unfortunately doesn't always happen in real life. But the man goes through a bad moment in his life just because of a small mistake, lack of character, or will to say no. I'll tell you a bit and invite you to watch it if you haven't. Then you'll understand why it's called Chaos Theory. In a beautiful and happy home, where there's a 7-year-old daughter, the husband, who was a writer and speaker, after a conference, is approached at the bar of the hotel lobby where the event was held by a strange woman, who had been part of the audience. She starts flirting with him. Suddenly, the man falls into a trap where the beautiful blonde woman gets him to drink a few sweet and strong alcoholic drinks that she orders and pays for, and she seduces him by promising to reveal a secret that would help him further his personal development and profession. He, a bit tipsy, let himself be persuaded and they go up to the room in that same hotel where he was staying, since he had to travel far from home for the conference. She goes into the bathroom with the excuse of splashing water on her face to cool off from the drinks and then comes out naked to throw herself at the man. At that moment, his wife calls the hotel room phone to ask how his presentation went, and she hears a noise made by the strange woman. The wife asks what happened, and he plays it off, saying he's very tired and will talk to her later, then hangs up. He rebukes the woman and leaves the room, abandoning her with her nudity and intentions. But the wife is not satisfied and calls again. This time the strange woman answers, leaving her shocked and with a bad taste of infidelity, which the husband never intended to commit. When the husband returns home, she furiously confronts him and kicks him out. He tells her it was a mistake, that he can explain, and that nothing happened, but she is hurt and obsessed with the idea that he cheated on her and may have been cheating for a long time. She tells him to leave, that she never wants to see him again, typical of those who feel scorned, whether true or not. Since he didn't want to argue and loved her, he decided to leave for a few days so his wife could calm down and let him explain. But while leaving in his car, another strange woman, pregnant, was recklessly driving and swerved into his path, forcing him off the road. He looks in the rearview mirror and sees her crash into a tree. He gets back on the road and runs to her car. The pregnant woman, who was driving recklessly because she was in labor or about to be, was safe but her car was wrecked. He carries her, puts her in his car, and rushes to the nearest hospital. This woman, who seems to be a single mother living alone, is immediately taken on a stretcher, and he is asked to sign a paper in case something happens to her during the delivery. After filling out and signing those papers, he leaves. But something happened afterward. The hospital attributed him as the father of the newborn child, and when they called his house and his wife answered, which hardly ever happens anymore because landlines are rarely used these days, the wife picked up the phone. Then, the hospital staff who called told her that the mother of the baby who had just been born had abandoned the baby at the hospital and had left. They were calling the man by his full name, saying they were looking for the father because he needed to come and pick up the baby from the hospital, since the mother had left without the child. The wife was left in shock, adding more anger and fury due to the misunderstandings and things happening to her husband, who in reality was a noble and good man, who had done nothing wrong and had not even intended to be unfaithful. When he calls to see his daughter, the wife lashes out even harder and, blinded by rage, begins to hate him more and more. He seeks help from his lawyer because he refuses to take responsibility for a child that is not his and for a woman he doesn't even know. The hospital, therefore, orders him to take a DNA test to verify paternity and then decide what to do with the baby. To his surprise, after the results come back, he is sadly informed that he has been sterile since birth and cannot have children. The brief joy of proving he was not the father of the newborn and the hope of reconciling with his wife, whom he loved, was drowned by the fact that the one who had been unfaithful in this story was his own wife when they were newly married. And to his greatest shock, the father of his 7-year-old daughter was their best friend. I imagine that now you're beginning to understand why the movie is titled Chaos Theory, just as I did when I watched it. In summary, the poor man suffers so much that he not only desires death and thinks about ending his life but also plans to end the life of his friend, inviting him on a boat trip to a cabin they used to rent. But I won't tell you the whole film, I'll just say it ends with a happy ending. His daughter grows up and both parents appear at her wedding when she marries a young man who was an employee of her father, the protagonist and poor man. Apparently, the daughter never found out what happened, and everyone forgives each other and moves on with life as if nothing had ever occurred. Well, I believe the true hero, and the one who truly forgives is the man, who, because of misunderstandings, was humiliated and fell into depression, to the point of feeling guilty and useless, and then found out he was the one who had been betrayed. Many men may identify with this fictional story, just as I partly identify with it, because, at the end of the story, the one who committed the betrayal wasn't me. Still, I forgave and continue to forgive, because I wasn't born for resentment, and I let her go so that she could be happy, even if she doesn't see it that way. Being alone isn't as bad as feeling alone while being accompanied, and that's how I felt. I would have liked for my story to have ended the same way, but that's just a movie, fiction, something that's nearly impossible to happen in real life. Besides, in my case, I ended up with a narcissistic woman, maybe from birth or upbringing, perhaps the devil set a trap for her, but she chose her worldly friends over me. And I don't see myself as a victim or guilty. I know I offended her, I know what I did wrong or what I was doing wrong. But when there's love, there's forgiveness. When God is in the home, there is salvation, protection, empathy, and harmony, and although there is suffering, we persevere because not everything is perfect. I wasn't unfaithful, nor did I physically or verbally abuse her. I'm not an alcoholic, nor was I a freeloader. And I can also say I endured many things, and that, out of love, I allowed things that even though I didn't agree with them, I accepted, because she was the mother of my children, the love of my life, a young woman who became a mother at the age of 22 and deserved to enjoy life or have a good time with friends. Meanwhile, I, an older man, sick and disabled, who did everything possible to please her in every way. I would even attend her parties or worldly gatherings just to make her feel good, but I couldn't last all night or for too long, because since 2016, I've been suffering from a condition that limits and afflicts me to this day, with chronic pain and fatigue. And when I say, worldly gatherings, don't be offended, I don't mean it in a religious tone. If you're not a Christian, I am, and I try to please God. What belongs to the world is of the world, but we, although we are in the world, are not of the world. I'm a social and fun person, I love to go out, but I do everything as a family. I knew these outside people, who love dancing and drinking, would end up causing my divorce. Because if the Word of God warns about it, then it must be true, and the Lord wants to spare us that suffering. My beloved wife stopped praying and seeking God during the pandemic, and honestly, I also contributed to that, which cooled our relationship with our Heavenly Father. At least I, after the quarantine, started going back to church, but she no longer wanted to. She made excuses, stopping working on Fridays so that she would have to work on Sundays, and thus avoid going to church, at a job where she had the flexibility to choose her schedule. Now, I live in much worse conditions than when I first arrived in this great country from Cuba, without enough income to meet my needs, help my children, and go out to enjoy time with them. And I accept what I must endure, giving thanks to God for everything. But if it weren't for my passion for writing, which helps me survive a little through the sale of my books and the service I provide to other authors, I wouldn't be able to get back on my feet, because the pension is not enough for anything. I only live to stay alive and to see my children grow up. I'm not a victim of anything or anyone, and if this is my karma, then I can do nothing but accept it. If I also gave place to the devil to destroy my home, then all that's left is to wait for God to lift me up, restore me, heal me, and give me new strength to continue at 56 years of age. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Whether you are a man or a woman, married or divorced, at least now you understand this chapter with what I've explained to you. I do not victimize the man, but you will understand that in today's world, where a narcissistic spirit prevails, the man is always on the losing end. The influencer narcissism. Narcissism is often attributed more to men than to women, but that may have been the case in the past. It's not about being sexist or anything like that, but rather acknowledging that narcissism, more than a psychological condition, is a spirit operating in today's world in various forms. On social media, we see many people, both men and women, portraying a luxurious and happy life, as if anyone cared. Individuals without direction or talent film themselves to gain followers, doing something foolish, attempting some apparent feat, speaking as if they were experts, even though the real experts make sense in sharing their knowledge and advising others, playing with their pets, showcasing their dresses, hairstyles, lingerie, or bodies. Women dance provocatively to attract followers and perhaps monetize by selling themselves without physical contact through platforms like OnlyFans or Instagram. All are possessed or influenced by a narcissistic spirit in a world where modesty, ethics, and morals are out of fashion. The more people participate and engage in this trend, the more fashionable, well-received, promoted, and esteemed it becomes. Those who remain pure and clean will be criticized, unwanted, and scorned by an increasingly corrupt society. Reflecting on this and thinking of writing about narcissism, which has gained momentum, and many people don't quite understand, God showed me that all these people, mostly young girls, are being influenced by this spirit. Anyone who watches becomes fascinated and follows them is being attacked and trapped by these demons. Once these demons gain entry into the lives of participants or this virtual audience, they go on to destroy their homes. If you give the devil a foothold, he won't miss the opportunity to ruin the victim's life, spiritually, morally, familiarly, economically, and/or mentally. This form of satisfaction is proven to harm the mental and physical health of those addicted. The Lord showed me how this narcissistic spirit subjected me, and I gave it entry to destroy my home, and then take control of my wife's mind, who neither prayed nor sought God and was forced to repudiate me. Even if one knows what is wrong and displeasing to God, when it becomes a habit, the improper or inappropriate becomes not just a habit but something accepted and justified. The victim of this influencer or virtual narcissism spirit opens the door, on their part, to a spirit of lust. If these people, participating in others' sins, were exposed to pornography, the spirit of lasciviousness, during their childhood or youth, they more easily succumb to this temptation and become easy prey for the spirit of lust. Both men and women can fall into this, but more women are tempted to expose themselves semi-nude or nude to thousands or even millions of completely unknown people, for pleasure or money, than men who do. This is what I call influencer narcissism or influential spirit. However, more men fall into the visual pleasure lust trap, caught by the spirit of lust and self-gratification, than women. There's no difference between this and pornography, which is another spirit called lasciviousness, for both the one who shows and the one who watches. Other types of influencers who do things for money or to have thousands and millions of followers on social media, aiming to feel important or monetize, and whose intention is not necessarily to educate, train, or advise others, are the money influencers, spirit of ambition or greed, beauty influencers, spirit of vanity, and distraction influencers. These distractions, which steal our time the most, involve watching short or medium videos of animals, celebrities, accidents, incidents, arrests, crimes, philosophy, others' lives, etc. All of this distances us further from God and affects our health and well-being in the short or long term. As I explained in my book, How to Live a Long and Abundant Life, if you want to live a long, healthy, and abundant life and have TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook installed on your phone, uninstall them as soon as possible. I'm not saying the same for YouTube, which comes embedded in the phone and is not as harmful as the ones mentioned earlier, even though you can lose a lot of time with shorts. At least, with YouTube, you can learn something. I also don't mention WhatsApp or Telegram, which serve to communicate directly with friends, family, clients, or business partners. Still, be careful with these, as your phone can be hacked or spied on if you don't adjust the settings properly. This will be the healthiest thing you do. I spend my time warning my children, but I can't force or prohibit them because they would feel repressed, plus, they don't live with me and are already teenagers. But if it were up to me, I would take away their phones because there's no need for a minor to have a cell phone unless they're working, not just studying. It's preferable to buy them a separate GPS to track them when they go to school instead of giving them a cell phone, which will hypnotize and dumb them down more and more. Not to mention all the harmful effects on health. The earlier they start, the more they expose themselves to these effects that harm health, mind, and well-being, unintentionally shortening their lives. Anyone who seeks recognition and emphasizes it in some way is being influenced by a narcissistic spirit. Class or social status does not exempt, immunize, or free someone from this. I have known humble and affectionate individuals dominated by this spirit. Some live or display humility for a while, then they remove the mask, revealing who they truly are, or they are influenced by other spirits, such as envy, selfishness, and resentment, or they suffer from inferiority complexes, rejection, etc. This narcissistic spirit can be found in individuals of high rank, power, or position, such as politicians, eccentric billionaires or philanthropists, executives, bosses, leaders, military personnel, scientists, professionals or not, as well as in subjects, soldiers, employees, students, and ordinary people, because, ultimately, it is a spirit, and the devil, the enemy of souls, only came to steal, kill, and destroy. Steal the blessing of salvation, spiritually and physically kill human beings, and destroy everything he can, families, churches, communities, businesses, and the individual as such. There are even ecclesiastical leaders, such as pastors, teachers, evangelists, and ministers who are influenced and dominated by this spirit that has become very common. As I said, some start very well, with a lot of modesty and humility, only to later reveal who they truly are or what controls them, because God weighs the spirits, and even if they don't appear arrogant, on the contrary, expressing and simulating humility. They act like they are, but in their words, you will discover their hearts. And it's not that they are bad people, many are good, kind, and even generous, but their ego is greater than their good heart. They long for and take pleasure in being recognized, flattered, or praised, even though they always claim to do it for the glory of God. The author's biography. Milco Baute Lopez, a Cuban writer, editor, and educator of international acclaim, has woven a fascinating trajectory over the decades. His pen, infused with passion and creativity, has been a beacon of knowledge and artistic expression since 1992, when he began enlightening the world with his insightful articles. The most significant chapter of his life was written on December 10, 1995, when Milco crossed borders and oceans to settle in the United States. This land of opportunities became his new home, and in 2001, with a profound sense of belonging, he embraced U.S. citizenship, merging his Cuban roots with his love for cultural diversity. The pursuit of knowledge and wisdom has always been a constant in Milco's life. This passionate autodidact, eager to nourish his intellect, embarked on a remarkable academic journey. He studied philosophy through an online course offered by the University of Edinburgh in the United Kingdom, and in 2016, he successfully completed his academic journey, becoming a graduate of this venerable institution. Milco Baute is not only an accomplished writer but also a prolific author. From 2008 to the present, he has given life to more than 80 books, showcasing his literary talent in both English and Spanish. In addition to his personal work, Milco plays a pivotal role in the publishing industry as an editor, writer, and distributor, collaborating with other authors to bring their stories to the world. One cannot fully grasp the rich palette of Milco's experiences without mentioning his technical background as a graduate in Cuba in 1986 as a technician in electrical power systems. This distinguished profession led him to practice his craft with skill for over 2 decades before his passion for writing and education led him down new paths. In summary, the life of Milco Baute Lopez is a symphony of creativity, perseverance, and dedication. His journey from the Cuban shores to the borders of the United States, through academic exploration and prolific literary production, is a testament to his unwavering spirit and commitment to cultural enrichment and knowledge in all its forms. Audiobook created by Baute Production Publisher. Tampa, Florida, United States of America. Telephone number, 813-693-8879. Email, authors@usa.com.